Star Citizen's item recovery encapsulates a lot of the problem with Star Citizen because they have two schools of thought. You've got your school of thought over here, which is make the game, get the features done, do whatever needs to be done to make sure that Star Citizen gets finished. And then you've got your school of thought over here that is, please, we want to play the game. We just want a playable game. Just make whatever is there work because we just want to enjoy it. Stop with the little things. Stop destabilizing stuff. Stop adding new things. So up until this last year, up until server meshing, that first school of thought was really the one that was, getting most of the attention. And honestly, it might not be the best thing, but it happened mainly because most of the focus was on Squadron. So they were like, hey, you know what? Just keep putting the features that we can into Star Citizen, get them in, make sure they work at a very basic level so that we can come back to them when we're ready to push for a beta and make them work better. So you see releases like ship docking or ship naming. You see releases like the inventory system and the medical system. All these different things that release, and to some extent they work, but they basically stop development. There's not really much else after that. And that's because they were very much on the whole, release a feature, move on, release a feature, move on, release a feature, move on. So what's changing now, and this was something that was kind of premeditated, I guess you could say, because of server meshing. They wanted to get the backend really into a good place, and then they wanted to start to focus on making it more of a game. Now, I think they haven't gotten the features in that they wanted to for that to happen. I think they probably wanted Vulkan to be fully functional. They wanted Gen 12 to be in a good place. They likely were hoping to have engineering in, the flight model in a better place, just things that didn't require them to still go in and like rip apart code. They probably just wanted to focus mostly on content and fixes. Unfortunately, the community's not down for that. And so the second school of thought has mainly been winning out now. Do not keep developing the game, or maybe try to a little bit on the side, but please just make the game playable. And so what they've been trying to do over the last, I guess, 3 to 4 months now is figure out what stuff is the most important to get working and what stuff can just be completely left to EPT or whatever it might be. Item recovery is one of the big ones that has to be working for that second school of thought. It's the same as insurance. It's the same as the medical system. It's the same as what's another good one? The death system. Like, these are systems that aren't glitches, but they're super crucial to the game to work correctly. So what they're doing now is they're going to give us the roadmap on how everything is going to work from now until they get to their supposed final realization of how this system will work. So first thing to realize, you're not going to be losing your stuff anymore. At least most of your stuff. You're going to be able to die with your stuff and respawn with it. And I'm going to take you through the actual detailed explanation of that. And then we will talk a little bit more about like why this is happening the way it is and how it might go from here. Okay, I'm not going to do any camera, and hopefully this works. Xylo posted on Spectrum. He said, "Hello everyone. As we prepare for the Evocati test phase of our upcoming 4.1 patch, we'd like to introduce the iterative release plan for item recovery, a long-awaited system that gives players more control over reclaiming their valuable gear after death. At CitizenCon 2954, we shared our long-term design for crafting, insurance, and item ship or recovery. If you need a refresher, both presentations are available on YouTube and will be helpful. Watch before diving into this post." So we've been over this enough. You guys know this very well. We don't have to go over it again, but maybe sometime in the future. All right, he said, "Today we want to provide a more detailed breakdown of some of the iterative releases that will start to bring these plans to life. The initial T0 rollout will be fairly basic compared to the full system, but it marks a crucial first step. As we shared at CitizenCon, the complete item recovery system will be far more robust and nuanced, making gear management to a core gameplay element. You'll be able to secure the items that matter most while still allowing room for piracy and emergent gameplay." The big things to remember from this are, with crafting, items cannot just be skins. If you lose a specific item, it's not just cosmetic. Now, we do have cosmetic skins, and for all intents and purposes, they could just make that. Well, actually, I'm not going to say that. I don't actually know what the full scope of that would be, but I imagine in terms of just the skins and paints, those are the kinds of things that like you could just rip off of the gun as somebody loots it and give back to the person who had it. So the person who killed that person still getting a gun. They're just not getting that specific skin. That protects your individual item without robbing people of getting loot. But that is a reason why they can't just have stuff sort of, I think the term is transmog, just kind of not be tied to the weapon itself, because sometimes the stats will make a difference now that crafting is a bigger part of the game. The other thing is there will be different tiers of insurance that will protect your items and your ability to get them back in the final version of the game. This is just their kind of first steps. This is going to be something that we get in 4.1 and probably it pains me to say, but the majority of this year, if not the whole year. When they do something like this, while they try to lay out the steps and make us excited that they're going to move forward on it, more often than not, they don't, because it's CIG. And while we're in a different period of time where they are trying to make the game more playable, and as I said, this will be a bigger focus because of that, I can't in any good confidence tell you that they're going to move on this quickly anymore. A year ago, maybe, but I don't know what CIG is going to do at this point. That being said, let's get into it. Let's see how much this pisses off people or makes them happy. With the initial rollout of item recovery in 4.1, so this is likely going to be something we start seeing pretty soon. 4.1, if it is the April, as we prepare for the Evocati test phase, So 4.1 will be our April patch, but we won't be getting everything right when it lands, as we went over in the last stream. So you're gonna respawn with the exact gear that you had equipped at the time of death. Big first statement. When you die, the stuff you had on your body will just be right back on your body. For those who weren't here prior to Persistence, prior to Alpha 3.15, when they started doing inventories, this is how Star Citizen worked. Like, it's funny because for the majority of the time we have played Star Citizen, this is how the game worked. We can go back to the release view here and look at all the different updates that have come out. From 3.1 all the way through 4.0, it wasn't until right here that we started to actually lose our stuff. Physical inventory support, adjusting shops, adding the local inventory. This was also the first time that you couldn't just grab your item from anywhere in the whole star system. Like if you owned something before 3.15 and it was on Microtech, you could just get it out of your backpack basically. After this though, they limited it so that it was just the planets that you were on. So if you were on ArcCorp, you will have all of your stuff from ArcCorp and all of your stuff from the space station around ArcCorp. And then it was, I think, around maybe 3.17 or something like that, when they were like, okay, now you don't have the stuff in your space station or the planet, it's all separated. And that's the game that we live in right now. So we're very used to losing our stuff, but this is going back to basically what it was before they started building this system. The emphasis here, though, is on the term equipped death, or equipped gear, as this is different than what you may have had in your inventory. This includes your equipped weapons, your armor, your magazines, your med pens, ensuring that your core loadout is retained. So the armor you have on, the weapons on that armor, all of the med pens, your tools, whatever is actively equipped on your person is going to remain on your person even when you respawn. What's in your inventory, which in your backpacks, or probably in your armor slots. I actually don't know if this would include your armor slots, but whatever's in your inventory, such as your backpack or other containers, will remain on your corpse and be able to be looted by other players. So this is a very big change to the way that Star Citizen is going to work in the short term. And it's going to mess with a lot of, well, not a lot of game loops, actually. It's going to mess with one game loop, 2 game loops, both rescue and fighting. Obviously, people won't care as much about losing their stuff, and people won't care as much about getting help from other folks, particularly getting like medical beacons would be the thing. My man AAK in the chat, there you go. Yeah, literally has the messages on chat that I would have expected. Yeah, this kind of kills your point of doing medical beacons. Doesn't kill being a medic, but people aren't really going to care too much to stay places unless they just want to save their time, which is a thing. And like, God, I wish I could just have my camera on. Camera! This is such an important thing to keep in mind, folks. People have been screaming for this change for years. Like, just one of the most requested things people have been talking about is Star Citizen doesn't respect my time. I always lose my stuff. I don't want to lose my stuff. Why doesn't this play like other games? And this was just going to go back to, again, those 2 schools of thought. Should the game be made to work as it is, or should they keep building it how it's supposed to be? Should they basically make everyone who's coming into the game now believe that they're going to be playing in a game where they won't lose their stuff, and then rip that band-aid off later to piss them off in large ways? Or should they just keep it as it is and let people lose their stuff and keep going through it right now? Yeah, this isn't a permanent change. We're going to get to the T1 and T2 representations of this, which is basically meant to show that the game is still headed in the direction it wants to go. This is just a temporary change. But I do think that this temporary change is going to bring this conversation back to the forefront of what kind of game is Star Citizen supposed to be. There are so many people joining the game over the last couple of years that want Star Citizen to change at a fundamental level. And the conversation surrounding the game has moved more and more in that direction, and I can't say that it doesn't feel like CIG is courting that, and they have to. They've got to go by their player base, and their player base is becoming more casual, and casual people are asking for more casual fixes and a more playable game right now. And these are the things that they're trying to do. But again, they're putting their money where their mouth is. All they want is for the game to work. That's what people are screaming at them. That's what they're going to do. They might not do it the best way or the way that we want, but they are trying very hard to, it seems now, do what the players have been asking for, as opposed to making the game. All right. Continuing on, while equipped items will also remain on your corpse, they will not be interactable. So they're just going to be like kind of a dead item. This will prevent item duplication while still preserving the visual state of your character at the time of death. This approach helps mitigate item duplication issues in the initial implementation while laying the groundwork for future expansions of the system in T1 and T2, which you can read more about below. It's going to be funny to see how this like glitches come about from this. Like items not being realized that they're supposed to be uninteractable and stuff. Or maybe we can just sell dead bodies with stuff on them now. All right, important notes for T0, by the way. Items stored in your inventory will not be protected and will remain on your corpse upon death, available to be looted, stolen by other players, or retrieved by you. So this is items in your backpack. Items such as magazines and med pens that you have equipped can still be looted from your corpse. However, you will also respawn with these items, as duplication concerns for these types of consumables are less concerning at this stage. Okay, so ammo and med pens. So this is like, they're basically just saying, like, multi-tools, industrial tools, gadgets, armor, and weapons can't be looted. And then everything else can be. T0 item recovery applies to all forms of respawning, whether in a medbed on a ship or at your assigned landing zone. To ensure that your weapon in active use is secured as an equipped item, it will automatically be stowed to your holster upon death. If you die within a landing zone, you will respawn with both your equipped gear and your inventory. So that's basically the way it's always been, I think. This is to help avoid you losing items of any kind should a death outside of your control happen. With T0, you will respawn with your previously equipped gear already attached to your character. All right. So moving on to T1 or T2 is where things start to make a little bit more sense. While T0 lays the groundwork and provides some assurance that your equipped items are not lost, we are already actively developing T1 and T2 implementations. These future updates will add more depth to the system, including a viable path for piracy. Now, they say they're working on it. Again, there's no way of knowing what this is going to look like time-wise. Even if they gave us a roadmap for this, there's still not really much way of knowing how this is going to play out, because we don't know what kind of problems they're going to run into here. They're avoiding adding features specifically they're avoiding focusing on adding features specifically for the reason that they don't want to run into this problem of, hey, we're going to do T1, T2, but we can't because we just broke the game with another feature. So what happens with this when 4.1 comes out? How long does it take for them to handle the small bugs in this system? We're not sure. And until that's figured out, we might not move forward to T1. Now, T1 says it's going to introduce the ability to register your gear and ships at kiosks or ASOP terminals. So this basically, T1 is doing for our gear what ASOP terminals have already done for the ships. Now, they say you're going to register the ships. This is obviously different from what we have right now. But that idea of going to the terminal and then claiming your ship when you need to get it back is sort of like what's going to happen here with all of our items in T1. So they say your personal loadout. Players can register their equipped items, which can be reclaimed for a fee at specific kiosks or freight elevators. It's the beginning of item insurance. Ships and interiors. Ships, along with their loadouts, decorations, and locker contents, can also be registered. They can then be reclaimed in the state they were previously registered at ASOP terminals for a price. So this would be your secondary insurance. I said I wasn't going to do it, but let's go back to the 1.0 discussion where they describe this.
Boo! We'll have two main taxes: inheritance tax as part of Death of a Spaceman, and security tax for your base that will cover the cost of planetary shield tech. Insurance, on the other hand, will be split between medical insurance, which covers your hospital imprints, and probably the most important one of all, ship insurance. Now, as we have Death of a Spaceman, we also need Death of a Spaceship. Losing your ship should be significant. Right now, for example, over 90% of all claims in the verse are for ships that have not been destroyed. And this is where ship insurance and our new warranty mechanic comes in. First up, we'll have 3 tiers of insurance, with level 1 being chassis insurance, level 2, chassis and component insurance, and level 3, chassis, component, and decorations insurance.
So that's what we're starting to see happen. And that is the end goal. What they're doing right now in 4.0 or 4.1, this is temporary. This is not the way the game is going to play. Let me think. Let me give you an example. Okay. No, that's not a good one because they just did that. Let's say, ships. Okay, so you know how like we don't have any sort of like power systems. There's just a bunch of random chairs and ships that don't work. That's not how the game's going to work in the future. Like those chairs are there because other things are going to work in the future that make use of those chairs. So in the same way with this isn't how it's going to work. This is not permanent. T0 is not the design of the game. This is not the way it's meant to play. This is temporary. This is them trying to get the game to work in a way that works for players right now, which, you can absolutely disagree with. Just keep in mind, just remember, this is not the way the game is going to work going forward forever. This is just temporary. They're just trying to make the game playable. It's still planned to have loss and loot and valued items. Now, I do think that T0 is going to be a mess because now you can just keep respawning right outside of a combat area. Have all your, we've lost the whole point of time. Everybody says Star Citizen doesn't respect your time. Now maybe it's respecting it too much. It's brown-nosing your time a little bit. It's saying, hey, you don't have to spend any time. You can just keep respawning with the gun that was on your body and go right back into combat and get shooting. And that kind of is a bummer because part of the confidence in a game like Star Citizen is once you kill someone, you know they're not coming back right away. So yeah, temporarily, it's going to be rough. But going back to the T1 notes here, they're adding on with looting and bricked items. Once an item is looted, it remains usable until the original owner reclaims it or marks it as stolen. At that point, a dead man switch is activated, meaning it will cease to function after a period of time. Going back again, I want to make sure you guys get to hear this too. This is where they're headed in terms of that
jump
direction.
Into an unlawful system.
Sorry, this took so long to find.
Let's explore what options you have if you pirate a ship. Okay, so first up, let's discuss ownership. All ships and high-value items that you own will automatically be assigned to you. This means if someone steals your ship, you can mark it as stolen, either via an insurance claim or in your Mobi. This will then trigger a dead man switch on the stolen ship, meaning it will cease to function after a period of time. But what options does this leave as a pirate? Well, you can still salvage it. You can tow it back to your fabrication hangar to dismantle it for resources. Or if you have a high enough rep with the council, our criminal guild, you can get the dead man switch disabled and pay for a new title deed to become its new owner.
So that's the idea behind the dead man switch, and that's what we're seeing them starting to implement here with T1. So I'm going to be honest with you. While the T0 of this is disappointing, laying out the roadmap for item recovery is just so f***ing late, and we've been listening to them talk about this for a while. I understand that people might have a knee-jerk reaction to this. It's not super pleased, but this is them communicating to us outside of the roadmap with a roadmap, and I would prefer a post like this that talks about this in depth and gives no sense of time than a couple more cards being thrown in here. Like it's basically, yeah, this is basically implementing a new system that handles medical item and vehicle insurance and associated fees. They're basically expanding on this without just like adding more and more stuff onto the roadmap. So I do appreciate that, and I'm glad that they're laying out for us more detail and more tangible milestones for the things they talked about in this incredibly important talk. Like, this is the most important presentation they've ever given on Star Citizen particularly, and I would be really annoyed if they weren't following up on some of the stuff that they had started to talk about. So I am glad that it's moving in the direction it is. It's just this temporary T0 is going to be really annoying. While a looted and or stolen bricked item is no longer usable, you can still sell them for items or credits during T1. So even if somebody does that dead man switch and claims the ship or item and you can't use it anymore and it bricks, you can still sell it, which I'm wondering how they'll get around that in terms of the insurance fraud that they're so worried about. But ultimately, this is pretty cool because this allows you to still use your insurance feature. Like, you can still get killed by something, realize you lost something, and then get back to a claim and make that sort of claim on the item But the person who is still out there in the sandbox, still trying to get strategic items and resources, they can still benefit from the work they did to get it. Pledge items are also auto-registered and will never lose their registration status. We knew about this. This is basically that warranty. They can always be claimed back even if they were not manually registered. Cool. So you're good to go on your pledge items in T1. If they launched with T1, it would be so great. With T1, you will no longer respawn with your preserved gear already equipped. You will need to visit a location, such as a freight elevator, to reclaim your registered items. We are developing a quality of life feature to allow you to re-equip your previous full loadout with one auto-equip button at this location. I think they're going to do this at lockers too. I think it would be a bad call for them to not have this function at lockers. You should be able to save previous loadouts, not with new stuff. But if you have a loadout that you saved on your ship's suit locker, you should absolutely be able to one button equip it to get outside. This is also something they've talked about, and this is where I come from kind of bad, or kind of back towards the beginning of this video, that we've listened to them talk about this stuff quite a bit. And you can go back to the second video they released about the new hangars. Here we go. Where they described how they wanted to have this system work. Let you in on it a little bit here.
Another big thing that we're working on is unique item recovery. This is something that the fans have been asking for a long time, and we're hoping that it's really going to finally resolve this problem of losing items or losing items mid-mission.
It looks like a simple subject, but there's a lot of little things to think about, like people buying some gear, giving to their friend and claiming it back. What happens to the version that was given to their friends, or even like if your body gets looted by somebody, how do we want to kind of cope with that?
So one of the ideas that we have running right now is that you would have a lost and found within your hab. So if you're playing, your mission crashes, you lose your progress, but you can go back to your hab, restart that mission, grab that item, and continue on where you left off. And we're really hoping to apply this to subscriber items and other unique items as well.
I think
Okay, that's a change right there, and I actually see Zero State in chat did point that out. This is something that's focused on all items in the game, whereas before it used to be really focused on subscriber items or the items that people owned. And I do think again that this is something that they've changed between September of 2023 and now, because we are dealing with a different group of players who are asking for different support in Star Citizen and an easier, like, this is probably partially on Star Citizen, on CIG, and partially on the community, but it feels like a knee-jerk reaction to a knee-jerk reaction of people jumping into an unfinished Star Citizen and being very unhappy with the state of how things work and making a lot of noise about that in many different ways, to the point where I think CIG is not doing the best at singling out what the actual problems that what they're talking about are. And so now CIG is kind of knee-jerk reacting and being like, okay, we're gonna make sure that you guys get what you want. We want, yes, have it all. Don't hurt anymore. Don't have problems anymore. Play Star Citizen and do everything you possibly can. They've given us hundreds of millions of dollars in payouts for missions. They have shifted over to, we're just going to try and focus on bug fixes and not really features as much. And we're going to make all items recover. And I wouldn't be surprised if they changed up some of the respawn mechanics this year. I think that they've basically just run down. They've kicked the can so far down the alley that now they're trying to, I guess, I don't know. Again, we'll see how this goes. I just feel like this is all because of the way that the communication works in this game, and now these changes are coming in to make big sweeping changes that a lot of people don't like, but a lot of people also do. A lot of people are really into this. All I can say is let's see how it plays out. I think until this happens in game, we're all just speculating. It's a new alley.
I think in the long run, we have a lot of plans. Just really trying to build out a feature set that can incorporate a lot of different ships, that can incorporate your teams, that allows you to be more in control. It allows you to try to find the best ways that work for you and your group. And right now, that's the main thing we're working on.
Our universe is big. We're going to keep building more systems, more planets, and we really want to find a way to make that exciting. We want to have you take goods from one planet to the other, explore places that you haven't seen, loading up, organizing all of your gear, all of your equipment, having it snapped to a grid, keeping everything safe. And it's a huge part of Star Citizen and where we want to go with the game.
That is a summary of that we're working towards for physicalized cargo. Now, this is going to be an ongoing process, starting with the first set of changes coming out.
So they also talked about their like a kiosk, and they mentioned that here it's in the freight thing. I do think that this should probably be the kiosk you have to go to for this stuff. Probably shouldn't be in your own personal storage. Like it should be somewhere that's harder to get to. Yeah, I do understand that this is going to have a bigger effect on PvP than anything else. But I think we do too much splitting PvP and PvE when in general the game is just supposed to like work as a overall function, and leaning in one way or the other, either PvE or PvP, seems to sort of skew the way the game works. You know, it's not like making a change to limit PvP only affects PvP. It affects the way that people encounter locations. And I think that goes back to the conversation that we were having about, or actually, that's not a conversation we were having. That's something I pulled up here. Will Star Citizen be solo for all players? I think this is also a conversation that, alongside PvP and PvE, is like not really the conversation to have, because you can do things solo and you can do things group, and you can do things that are meant to be done as a group solo, and you can do things that are meant to be done solo as a group, and it really just kind of depends on what you're doing. And these kind of conversations are popping up a lot in Star Citizen, I guess mainly because CIG just did not do a good job of explaining what the game was going to be. They just changed too much. Or rather, they didn't do their 1.0 talk early enough. Oop, not this one. The other one. The other one we watched. All right. Tier 2. How's it going to change after this sort of halfway insurance solution? Tier 2 is going to introduce a way to restore previously bricked items for a price. So you're going to be able to get back the stuff that you stole from somebody else, even after they've claimed it. It says looting and bricked items will be able to be sold, dismantled, or crafted, or used for crafting. Able to be sold, dismantled for crafting items, or restored, with the potential cost of crafting materials and credits, of course, to make it your own. So there will be ways to get it back for a cost. This system creates a viable path for piracy, allowing you to claim another player's belongings if you take the necessary steps to legitimize ownership. It also said if an item had a cosmetic applied, restoring it will remove the cosmetic in the process. Okay, see, that's what we were talking about with the skins. The introduction of item recovery is a significant step toward making gear persistence more meaningful while maintaining the risk-reward balance of looting. T0 in Alpha 4.1 is just the beginning, and as we further integrate into the broader crafting and insurance systems, we'd be actively refining and updating with the help of your feedback throughout the PTU process. They're going to get so much feedback. The thing that I think this is most affecting is insurance and how we understand insurance working, and crafting. I need to think about how this affects crafting, and I'm thinking from the T2 perspective here, not these earlier ones. They never really specified how the crafting was going to affect the economy. If they were going to actually move from a 10% player run economy, because they used to do this whole, oh, we're going to have 90% of the game actually run itself. We're going to have the economy regulate itself. It's going to be AI that are mostly making things work. And then our players are going to make up 10% or however much of the economy is left over. This was partially to make sure that players weren't like being asked to do a mission and then no players would be around, so somebody would just be left stranded forever, and instead an AI could show up and take that place. But this was also so that players couldn't do something that completely wrecks the economy in an area and the game can't recover from that. So we don't know if they wanted to change that. They've talked more about it being more player focused since CitizenCon, but I don't know how much. And if it's, depending on how player focused they want it to be, this could really affect crafting and how much people care about replenishing supplies and getting those unique crafted goods. Because if you can just keep getting them back and claiming them, that changes things. But I do think that we're going to see some complications here when it comes to crafted stuff. Why would you craft anything if you can just kill yourself and get a new one? Well, I think because of the fee, right? So that's where I'm thinking they might want to complicate things, where they talk about getting things back for the cost of the crafting or for the fee that it is. That would be different. If you have to pay in the materials of everything you use to craft that item to get it back, then that would make it so that you could get stuff back, but you still have to, do the work to get it. And I think that's what they talked about with ships, right? With ships that weren't under warranty. They already talked about how gear will degrade over time. They did. Yeah, you will have to replace it as stuff breaks down and gets messed up over time. That's a good point. Yeah, looking at it over the long term is, that's like T2 is what's important here. It's trying to figure out, the whole reason they're doing this is what we talked about throughout this entire video. They are trying to make the game work. That's all they want to do. They're just tired of getting yelled at for the game being broken, so now they just want to put whatever they can in to make sure that people are as least angry as possible. And right now, the people who are most angry are those who are losing their stuff. So they're trying to fix that. But this is what really matters. T2 is where we should be putting our brain power and our understanding and our criticism of whether this system is going to be able to drive the game long term or not. That's the most important thing. When we finally are playing Star Citizen 1.0, it can't be some kind of half-made thing that just rolled over from the alpha. It's got to be the game that they've always talked about it being. How much of a fee are we talking? No clue. Not a clue at all. I would assume it's going to be equivalent to the cost of the item in that location or the materials needed to craft it. T2 does sound years away. I'm not saying it's close. I'm just saying T2 is what they finally should be headed towards. Just want to play the game and experience it without spending hours gearing up. That's what they're answering to. Somebody asked earlier, by the way, why I thought they were done doing T0 stuff. That was for the core gameplay team. So that was like the interaction system, the FPS experience stuff, the inventory and medical stuff. I think we did a decent job of reviewing this. I was all over the place, to be honest, guys. I'm really sorry. I still want to put this out just for the communication and the information and like some of the insight and chat and all that. But my head is not in it today, and this stream being the problem that it is and everything, I think it's just messing me up. So I hope you got good info from this.